The morning sun painted the rocky mountain peaks in brilliant shades of gold and amber, as 5 lifelong friends stood at the trailhead of Devil's Canyon. What started as a celebration of their college reunion would soon become the most terrifying day of their lives. Sarah, the natural leader of the group, adjusted her backpack straps and checked her GPS one final time. Her breath formed small clouds in the crisp mountain air, as she spoke with the authority of someone who'd spent countless weekends conquering these peaks. Remember, we stick together. This trail has some tricky sections, and the weather can change without warning up here. But her words of caution were met with the easy confidence of youth and friendship. Mike, always the joker of the group, rolled his eyes playfully and flashed that infectious grin that had gotten them all into trouble more times than they could count. "Come on, Sarah. We've been hiking together since we were 12 years old. What could possibly go wrong?" His laugh echoed off the canyon walls, bouncing between the towering pine trees and granite cliffs. It was a sound full of joy and anticipation, a sound that would soon be replaced by something far more desperate and terrifying. The irony of his words would haunt them all in the hours to come. Emma, the quiet photographer of the group, was already lost in her element, capturing the morning light as it filtered through the dense canopy of evergreen trees. Her camera clicked steadily, documenting what she believed would be just another perfect adventure with her closest friends. "The lighting is perfect today," she whispered, more to herself than anyone else, as she adjusted her lens settings to capture the interplay of shadows and golden sunlight dancing across the forest floor. Jake, the former college athlete whose competitive spirit had never quite faded, bounced on his toes with nervous energy, his hiking boots finding purchase on the rocky ground. "I've been looking forward to this for months," he said, shouldering his pack with practiced ease. "Nothing beats being back with you guys. It feels like old times." His enthusiasm was contagious, lifting everyone's spirits as they prepared to embark on what should have been nothing more than a perfect day in the wilderness. And then there was Alex, adventurous, impulsive Alex, who had suggested this particular trail in the first place. His eyes sparkled with that familiar mischievous glint as he pointed toward the winding path that disappeared into the dense forest. "Trust me, the view from Eagle's Peak is worth every step. You'll thank me when we get there." He had no way of knowing how prophetic those words would become, or how they would all come to understand the true meaning of gratitude before this day was over. For the first 3 hours, everything went exactly according to plan. The friends fell into their familiar rhythm that had been established over years of shared adventures. Sarah took point, navigating with the precision of a seasoned guide, while Mike followed close behind, providing a steady stream of commentary and jokes that kept everyone's spirits high. Emma documented their journey with the eye of a true artist, stopping frequently to capture moments that she somehow knew were special, even if she couldn't explain why. Jake set an energetic pace that kept them all motivated, his athletic training evident in the easy way he navigated the increasingly challenging terrain. And Alex served as their scout and storyteller, pointing out hidden trails and secret viewpoints that only he seemed to know about, regaling them with tales of previous adventures in these very mountains. The trail wound through dense forest, where ancient pine and spruce trees created a cathedral-like canopy overhead. The air was thick with the scent of pine needles and rich earth, and the only sounds were their footsteps on the packed dirt trail. the occasional call of a hawk circling high above, and the distant rush of a mountain stream somewhere in the valley below. As they climbed higher, the trees began to thin, giving way to expanses of weathered granite and patches of hardy mountain wildflowers that had somehow found purchase in the rocky soil. Then the trail opened onto a series of massive rocky outcroppings, and the real challenge began. Here, enormous granite boulders, some as large as small buildings, created a natural obstacle course that had been carved by millions of years of wind, water, and geological forces. The rocks had been sculpted into fantastic shapes, leaving behind a maze of crevices, caves, and narrow passages that would test even experienced hikers. Some of the boulders balanced precariously on top of each other, creating natural bridges and tunnels that seemed to defy gravity itself. "This is it," Alex announced, his voice filled with excitement as he surveyed the rocky landscape ahead. "The technical section. Once we get through here, it's basically smooth sailing to the summit." He had hiked this route twice before, but never with his college friends, and he was eager to share this challenging and beautiful section of the trail with the people who meant the most to him. The friends spread out slightly, each finding their own path through the boulder field, according to their individual comfort levels and hiking experience. Sarah stayed close to the main trail markers, her natural caution serving her well as she carefully planned each step through the rocky maze. Mike followed directly behind her, trusting her judgment and navigation skills completely. Emma had stopped to photograph a particularly striking rock formation, her artist's eye drawn to the dramatic interplay of light and shadow created by the massive stone structures. Jake and Alex had moved ahead, their competitive spirits and shared love of physical challenges driving them to find the most interesting and demanding route through the rocks. They moved with the confidence of experienced hikers, calling back encouragement to the others as they picked their way through the granite labyrinth. That's when Alex spotted something that would change everything: a narrow gap between two enormous boulders that seemed to offer a shortcut to the other side of the rock field. "Hey, check this out," Alex called over his shoulder, his voice echoing strangely in the confined space between the massive stone. "I think I found a passage. This could save us at least 20 minutes. The gap was barely 3 feet wide at its entrance, but Alex could see daylight filtering through from the other side, suggesting that it was indeed a viable route through the boulder field. Without waiting for the others to catch up or offer their input, Alex squeezed through the opening. This was typical of his impulsive nature. He had always been the first to try something new, the first to take risks, the first to explore uncharted territory. For a moment, everything seemed perfectly fine. He could hear his friends' voices behind him, Jake calling out words of caution, mixed with admiration for Alex's boldness. But then something changed. The narrow passage, which had seemed merely tight at first, began to constrict further as Alex pushed deeper into the gap between the massive granite slabs. The walls of stone pressed in on both sides, and loose gravel shifted treacherously under his feet. And then the world went silent, except for one terrible, grinding sound: the sound of stone against stone, ancient and inexorable. What happened next would replay in slow motion in everyone's minds for years to come, each detail etched permanently into their memories, with the clarity that only comes from moments of absolute terror. As Alex pushed through what appeared to be the narrowest part of the passage, confident that the worst was behind him, His left foot slipped on a patch of loose scree that had accumulated in the bottom of the crevice. In trying to catch himself and prevent a fall, he instinctively planted his leg more firmly, wedging it deeper into the gap, just as the massive boulder above shifted with a grinding, ominous sound. The rock didn't fall. If it had, Alex would have been killed instantly. Instead, it settled, moving perhaps only an inch or two, but that small movement was enough to transform a tight passage into an inescapable trap. Alex's left leg, from mid-calf to ankle, was now pinned in a granite vise that no amount of human strength could move. The boulder above him, which must have weighed several tons, had been delicately balanced for perhaps centuries, and Alex's movement through the passage had been just enough to disturb that ancient equilibrium. Help! The word tore from Alex's throat, raw and desperate, carrying a note of panic that none of his friends had ever heard from him before. "I'm stuck. I can't move my leg." The sound of his voice, distorted by the stone walls around him, was somehow both muffled and amplified at the same time, creating an eerie echo that seemed to come from the very heart of the mountain itself. The panic in his voice cut through the peaceful mountain air like a blade, instantly transforming what had been a pleasant hiking adventure into a life-or-death emergency. Within seconds, his 4 friends had abandoned their backpacks and rushed to the gap between the rocks where Alex had disappeared. The casual conversations and laughter of moments before were replaced by urgent shouts and the sound of scrambling footsteps on granite. "Alex, Alex, where exactly are you?" Sarah's voice cracked with fear as she pressed her face to the narrow opening, trying to see into the shadowy passage where her friend was trapped. Her wilderness training was already kicking in, but nothing had prepared her for the terror of hearing one of her closest friends in such distress. "I'm about 10 feet in. My leg, it's completely trapped. The rock shifted when I was trying to get through, and now I can't get out." Alex's breathing was becoming rapid and shallow, the early signs of panic setting in. Even in the cool mountain air, sweat was beginning to bead on his forehead as the reality of his situation began to sink in. "I can't move it at all. Every time I try to pull, it just gets tighter." Jake immediately tried to squeeze through the gap to reach his friend, his broad shoulders and athletic build working against him as he attempted to navigate the narrow opening that Alex had barely managed to fit through. "I can't get to you, man," Jake called out, frustration and fear evident in his voice. "The opening's too narrow for me. Can you move your leg at all, even just a little bit?" No. Alex's voice was becoming strained now, the pain and stress taking their toll. "I've tried everything. I can't move forward. I can't move backward. I think it's really bad. Guys, I'm starting to lose feeling in my foot." For the first time since they'd known him, his friends heard something in Alex's voice they'd never heard before: genuine, bone-deep fear mixed with the terrible realization that he might be facing something he couldn't joke his way out of or overcome through sheer determination. Emma immediately pulled out her phone with hands that were shaking so badly she could barely operate the device. Her fingers fumbled with the screen as she tried to dial 911, hope and desperation warring in her chest. But after a few seconds, her face fell, and she looked up at the others with an expression of pure despair. "No signal," she announced, her voice hollow with dread. "There's no cell service up here. We're completely cut off." The words hit the group like a physical blow. In an age where help was usually just a phone call away, the reality of being truly isolated in the wilderness was almost incomprehensible. They were miles from the nearest road, hours from the nearest town, and their friend was trapped in a situation that was beyond their ability to handle alone. Sarah forced herself to take a deep breath and think clearly, drawing on years of wilderness training and emergency preparedness courses. Her hands were shaking, but her voice became steady and authoritative as the natural leader in her took control of the crisis. Okay, everyone listen to me carefully. Mike, you're the fastest runner among us, and you know these trails better than Emma or I do. Take my GPS unit and get back to the trailhead as fast as you possibly can. There's an emergency phone there. I saw it when we signed in this morning. Call 911 and tell them we need mountain rescue at Devil's Canyon, mile marker 4.2. Tell them we have a hiker trapped between rocks, and it's going to require specialized equipment to get him out. Mike's face was pale, but he nodded grimly as he grabbed the GPS device from Sarah's outstretched hand. What if the rescue team can't find us? What if they get lost trying to reach this location? His voice betrayed the same fear they were all feeling, that even if help was summoned, it might not arrive in time, or might not be able to locate them in the vast wilderness. Go, Sarah shouted, her voice echoing off the rocks with an authority that brooked no argument. Alex needs professional help, and he needs it now. Every minute counts. The urgency in her voice was unmistakable, and Mike didn't hesitate further. He turned and sprinted down the trail, his athletic shoes pounding against the rocky path as he disappeared into the forest, carrying with him their only hope of getting the kind of help that Alex desperately needed. Meanwhile, Jake had found a larger opening about 10 feet away from where Alex was trapped. I'm going to try to get around to the other side, he announced, his voice tight with determination. Maybe I can reach him from there, or at least get a better idea of exactly how he's stuck without waiting for a response. He began the challenging process of climbing over the massive boulder that was holding his friend prisoner. Be careful, Emma called after him, her voice cracking with emotion. We can't afford to have anyone else get hurt. She was fighting back tears, trying to be strong for Alex's sake, but the photographer in her couldn't help but notice how the shadows were lengthening as the sun moved across the sky. Time was passing, and with each passing minute, Alex's situation could be getting worse. Sarah pressed her face close to the gap again, trying to project calm and confidence, even though her heart was hammering in her chest. Alex, talk to me. How's the pain level right now? Can you describe exactly what you're feeling? She knew that keeping him talking was important, both to monitor his condition and to prevent him from sliding into panic or despair. It's getting worse, Alex admitted, his voice strained with the effort of trying to remain calm. At first it was just pressure, but now it's starting to really hurt, and I can't feel my toes anymore. Sarah, I can't feel anything below my ankle. His voice dropped to a whisper as he voiced the fear that was growing in all their minds. What if I'm losing circulation? What if the damage is permanent? What if they have to? He couldn't finish the sentence, couldn't voice the terrible possibility that was haunting all of them. Don't you dare go down that road, Sarah said firmly, though her own heart was racing with the same fears that Alex had just voiced. We're going to get you out here, and you're going to be fine. I promise you that. Do you hear me? I promise. The words felt hollow even as she spoke them, because she knew that some promises were beyond her power to keep. But she also knew that hope was one of the few things she could offer her trapped friend. The minutes stretched into what felt like hours, each one passing with agonizing slowness. Jake had managed to reach the other side of the boulder, and could now see Alex clearly through a small gap in the rocks. The sight that greeted him made his stomach drop, and his hands clench into fists. His friend's leg was wedged tight between two massive rocks, the space so narrow that even their thinnest climbing rope couldn't be threaded through to help with any kind of extraction attempt. "Okay, I can see you now," Jake called out, trying to keep his voice steady and reassuring. "The good news is I don't see any bleeding or obvious signs of a compound fracture. But Alex, your leg is really wedged in there tight. It looks like the rock settled down on top of your leg. When you were trying to get through," he paused, studying the situation from his new vantage point. "I can see your boot, and you can still wiggle your toes a little bit, which is a good sign for circulation." Emma had taken on the role of timekeeper and morale booster, though inside she was falling apart. Her camera hung forgotten around her neck, as she focused entirely on the crisis at hand. "Mike's been gone for 45 minutes now," she announced, glancing at her watch for what felt like the 100th time. "He's probably reached the trailhead by now. Help should be coming soon." But even as she spoke the words, she knew that soon was a relative term in mountain rescue operation. "What if they can't find us?" Alex's voice was getting weaker, the stress and pain taking their toll on his physical and mental reserves. "What if the rescue team gets lost or can't navigate through the boulder field? What if I'm stuck here forever?" The questions tumbled out of him, each one giving voice to the fears that were eating away at his resolve. "Stop it," Sarah commanded, though tears were streaming down her cheeks now, carving clean tracks through the dust and sweat on her face. "Remember when we got lost on Mount Wilson during our senior year? You were the one who kept us all calm that night. You told us that as long as we stuck together, we could handle anything that the mountains threw at us. Well, we're sticking together now, and we're going to handle this too." "That's right," Emma added, forcing cheerfulness into her voice, even though her heart was breaking. "And remember, you still owe me $20 from poker night last month. I'm not letting you get out of paying up that easily. We've got plans, Alex. We're supposed to go to Jake's wedding next spring, remember? And Sarah's starting her new job in Denver, and we promised we'd help her move. You can't miss any of that." Despite everything, the pain, the fear, the terrible uncertainty, Alex managed a weak laugh. "You guys are absolutely crazy," he said, but there was affection in his voice, and for a moment he sounded more like himself. "Crazy about our friends," Jake said from his position on the other side of the rocks. "We're not going anywhere without you, buddy. That's a promise, and you know we don't break our promises to each other." The conversation was interrupted by a new sound, a distant rumbling, that at first seemed like it might be thunder from an approaching storm. But as it grew louder and more distinct, they realized what it was, and hope flooded through them like a physical sensation. "Helicopter!" Emma shouted, jumping to her feet and waving her bright red jacket above her head like a signal flag. "Alex, do you hear that? They found us. Mike got through, and they found us." The sound of the helicopter rotors cutting through the mountain air was the most beautiful sound any of them had ever heard. The helicopter circled their location twice, the pilot assessing the challenging terrain and looking for a safe place to land. Finally, it settled on a relatively flat area, about a quarter-mile away, and within minutes, a team of 4 mountain rescue specialists was hiking toward their location. They moved with practiced efficiency, carrying equipment that looked like it could move mountains: specialized hydraulic tools, medical supplies, and communication gear. The team leader, a weathered man with graying hair, and the kind of calm competence that comes from years of handling emergency situations, introduced himself as Captain Rodriguez. He quickly assessed the situation, his experienced eyes taking in the massive boulders, the narrow gap where Alex was trapped, and the obvious distress of the friends who had been maintaining their vigil. "We're going to get you out of there, son," he called to Alex through the gap, his voice carrying the authority of someone who had successfully handled dozens of similar rescues. "But I need you to stay calm and follow our instructions exactly. We've dealt with this kind of situation before, and we have the tools and experience to handle it safely." What followed was a carefully orchestrated rescue operation that demonstrated the precision and expertise of professional mountain rescue teams. Captain Rodriguez explained their plan to Sarah and the others while his team set up their equipment. "We're going to use specialized hydraulic bladders to create controlled pressure points," he said, indicating the compact but powerful-looking devices his team was assembling. "Think of them like extremely precise car jacks. We can use them to shift the rock gradually and safely, creating enough space to extract your friend without causing additional injury." The rescue process was painstakingly slow and methodical. Every few minutes, the team would stop to check on Alex's condition, monitoring his vital signs and making sure that the pressure from the trapped leg wasn't causing complications elsewhere in his body. They used fiber optic cameras to get a clear view of exactly how his leg was positioned, and they communicated constantly with each other using hand signals and technical terminology that spoke to their years of training and experience. Alex's friends never left his side throughout the entire process. They took turns talking to him through the gap, sharing memories, making plans for future adventures, and providing the kind of emotional support that no amount of professional training could replace. Sarah told him about her new apartment in Denver and how she was going to need help assembling furniture. Emma shared her excitement about a photography exhibition she was planning and how she wanted Alex to be there for the opening. Jake talked about his upcoming wedding and how he couldn't imagine having the ceremony without his college roommate standing beside him as his best man. "Remember that time in college when you convinced us all to go bungee jumping?" Sarah asked during one particularly tense moment, when the hydraulic equipment was making ominous groaning sounds as it worked against the massive weight of the boulder. "Yeah," Alex replied, his voice weak, but still carrying that familiar note of mischief. "You said I was completely crazy then, too." "You are crazy," Jake added from his position, where he could see both Alex and the rescue operation. "That's exactly why we love you. Life would be boring without your crazy ideas and adventures." The sun was beginning to set by the time Captain Rodriguez finally announced the words they had all been praying to hear. "We've got movement. The rock is shifting." The hydraulic bladders had been working for over 2 hours, applying steady, controlled pressure to strategic points on the massive boulder. Slowly, almost imperceptibly at first, the ancient stone was beginning to yield to human engineering and determination. The next few minutes were the most critical of the entire operation. As the boulder gradually moved, creating precious inches of space, Alex had to work closely with the rescue team to carefully extract his leg without causing further injury. The process required perfect timing and coordination between the trapped hiker and the rescue specialists. "On my count, I need you to pull straight back," Captain Rodriguez instructed, his voice calm but intense with concentration. Don't twist, don't jerk, just steady, even pressure. We're going to count down from 3, and when I say now you pull, while we maintain pressure on the hydraulic system. 1, 2, 3. Now. There was a moment of resistance, a heartbeat where it seemed like the mountain itself was reluctant to give up its prisoner. And then suddenly, with a sound like a sigh of relief from the stone itself, Alex was free. His legs slid out of the rocky trap that had held him prisoner for over 5 hours, and he collapsed backward into the waiting arms of one of the rescue team members. The cheer that went up from his friends could probably have been heard back at the trailhead. Emma was crying openly now, tears of relief and joy streaming down her face as she watched Alex being carefully moved to a safe area where the medical team could examine his injured leg. Jake scrambled over the rocks with surprising agility, desperate to embrace his friend and confirm with his own eyes that Alex was really, truly free. Sarah coordinated with Captain Rodriguez for the medical evacuation, her wilderness training finally coming in handy, as she provided detailed information about Alex's condition throughout the ordeal and the timeline of events. Her voice was steady and professional, but her hands were shaking with relief and exhaustion from the emotional roller coaster of the day. The medical examination revealed that while Alex's leg was severely bruised and swollen, with deep contusions that would take weeks to heal completely, there were no broken bones, a miracle, considering the tremendous pressure that had been applied by the massive boulder. The doctors later attributed his relatively minor injuries to the precise way the rocks had trapped him, and the quick response of both his friends and the professional rescue team. As the helicopter lifted off, carrying Alex to the hospital with Jake by his side for moral support, the remaining friends watched from the ground below. The sun was setting now, painting the mountains in the same golden hues that had greeted them that morning, when their biggest concern had been whether they had packed enough water for the hike. Everything had changed in the span of a single day, but somehow the beauty of the wilderness remained constant, indifferent to human drama, yet somehow comforting in its eternal presence. 6 months later, when Alex had recovered enough to return to the mountains, the 5 friends made a pilgrimage back to Devil's Canyon. Alex walked with a slight limp that would probably never fully disappear, a permanent reminder of the day when everything almost went wrong. But his spirit was unbroken, his love of adventure undimmed by his brush with disaster. The narrow gap between the rocks had been permanently marked with warning signs by the Park Service, ensuring that no other hiker would face the same terrifying ordeal that Alex had endured. "You know," Alex said as they stood at the spot where he had been trapped, looking up at the massive boulders that had held him prisoner, "I still think the view from Eagle's Peak is worth the climb." His friends looked at him in amazement, shaking their heads at his irrepressible optimism and adventurous spirit. "Are you seriously suggesting we continue to the summit?" Sarah asked, though there was laughter in her voice, now instead of the fear that had characterized that terrible day 6 months earlier. Alex grinned, the same infectious smile that had gotten them all into trouble so many times over the years, the smile that had seen them through college pranks and heartbreaks and adventures across 3 continents. "Come on, guys. What could possibly go wrong?" But this time, when he spoke those fateful words, they all laughed together, the sound echoing off the canyon walls like a celebration of survival and friendship. Some bonds can only be forged in the crucible of shared adversity. Some friendships can only be tested and proven in moments when everything hangs in the balance, and the only thing standing between disaster and salvation is the refusal to abandon the people who matter most. That day in Devil's Canyon had tested their friendship in ways they never could have imagined, and it had emerged stronger than ever. The five friends did continue their hike to Eagle's Peak, staying carefully on the marked trail and taking no unnecessary risks. The view, when they finally reached it after all these months, was indeed spectacular, a panoramic vista of snow-capped peaks stretching to the horizon, pristine alpine lakes nestled in hidden valleys, and forests that seemed to go on forever. But they all agreed that the most beautiful sight had been Alex walking free from those rocks, surrounded by the people who had refused to leave him behind. Because that's what real friendship means. It means never giving up, even when the situation seems hopeless. It means staying by someone's side when the rocks close in, and the world goes dark, and there's no guarantee that help will come in time. It means being the voice that calls out through the darkness. We're not going anywhere without you. Some stories end with dramatic rescues and happy reunions. The best ones end with the promise that no matter what mountains you face in life, no matter what crevices threaten to swallow you up, you won't face them alone.